on aggro. Ross versus Patel. Players shuffling up, getting ready to go. Both these players here 8-2. Certainly in great position to make the top 8 today.
So Tariq playing a bigger build of the deck. 3 main deck copies of Surak, the Hunt Caller, and main deck Wingmate Rock.
I imagine this is probably a pretty good place for Surak.
Well, this is the one matchup where I really like Surak, is against strategies that don't kill things. And there aren't that many of them in Standard. Standard is a very creature-oriented format. And so people are going to be equipped with removal spells for the most part, and that's part of the problem that I have with Surak. But Tom's going to let Tariq do his thing, and Surak definitely speeds up how quickly your deck can kill.
We're all starting off with the Plains, Patel with a Sansep Citadel. So Tom has an idea of what he's up against. It is Abzan. Don't really know exactly which form of Abzan it is. But he will find out soon here as the boss is in the tank here on turn number 2. Flooded Strand will be sacrificed. An island on the way, it seems, as Tom will consult his hand here.
He has no other lands and a Battle-Wise Hoplite in his hand. So if he gets a Plains, it means he's saying, I've got a lot of cheap white cards in my hand and I can do things without having to cast this Battle-Wise Hoplite for a little while.
He's going to go with the Hero of Eros.
Seeker of the Way in his hand as well, a lot of cheap white cards. So you understand the logic here. Wants to be able to cast all the white cards in his hand without having to worry about colored mana being an issue. Battle-Wise Hoplite might be on the shelf for a little while as a result.
Patel will take a draw. Shmoka's command in hand. Thoughtseize there as well. Always a powerful card against this sort of strategy. That's a forest. Here's a Death Dealer. And now Tom probably has a great idea of what he's up against.
Yeah. This is the giveaway.
Or also play a Defiant Strike. Trigger Heroic, take a draw. Into the red zone he'll go. And just pass the turn back. So not a very impressive turn there for Tom, as Patel will take a draw.
Tom still gets to hold up God's Willing, though. Abzan aggro is not always the smoothest out of the gate, so Tom can capitalize this even if his opening's not as efficient as he would like.
That's some very shaky mana. The mana comes up well. The deck is quite good. Here's a Defiant Strike. Now Tom will show his hand with 2 copies of God's Willings, 2 copies of Secret Way, and 2 Battle-Wise Hoplite.
A lot of things for Tom to play. The 2 copies of God's Willing is really bad news. I would imagine Tariq most likely just takes one of the God's Willings because it's the most powerful card in Tom's deck once he already has something in play.
The old 3 pairs.
Yep. And the creatures in Tom's hand are a little redundant, so going after one of those I don't think is very productive.
Now Tom has some good draws in this situation, but he also has some really bad draws too.
He certainly does.
Ordeal Thassa, Jamoka's command, those are really bad draws right now. Death Dealer might be feeling a little frisky, we'll see. See Patel's hand, Hero's Downfall, Siege Rhino, Fleecemane Lion 2.
Yeah, Patel has the opportunity here to either hold up mana for regeneration or cast the Fleecemane Lion. Because I think Tariq has Downfall in hand, he's best served just getting the Fleecemane Lion into play. So when he starts casting the Hero's Downfalls, he has as much stuff in play to close out the game quickly as possible.
Death Dealer comes in, Fleecemane Lion will join the party as well. We'll also draw a card.
That was a big one, that was his island.
Yep.
This is huge. Now the hoplites in his hand are turned on. He also gets to make a play while holding up God's Willing.
It's a big turn. He's going to go with Seeker of the Way instead of going to the Battle-Wise Hoplite and pass the turn back. Patel already down to 9. He's dealt himself a decent amount of damage with Caves Coilos and Thoughtseize.
Very common for Obs on aggro. I mean, it's not a pain-free deck by any stretch. Some copies of Mana Confluence hang out in these decks. Thoughtseizes, Obs on Charms. It's the place where Obs on aggro gets tripped up the most against other aggressive strategies. It's not like his spells are worse than Tom's. In fact, I think Tariq has the better spells. The mana is just a little bit inconsistent and painful.
Mana Confluence the draw. It's a Battle-Wise Hoplite.
Legacy players, welcome to round 2. You have 50 minutes.
Tariq looks like he's going to take one and play Hero's Downfall here. Going to go after the Hero Heroes. We'll see if Tom has any interest in protecting it. Again, with one God's Willing in hand, he's really got to maximize how he wants to use it. And he'll use it here.
It's his biggest thing in play, so I feel like he just has to use the God's Willing. Can't really save it for much else, anything much better than this.
Tariq will draw. Windswept Teeth is a big one. That's his 4th land. It can search up a Plains here to give himself some fixing. Now he can start raining down with Siege Rhinos if he wants to. He's got at least one in hand.
Also has a downfall here.
Yeah. He'll go the downfall route. Take one to cast it.
And I prefer the downfall this turn, even though Siege Rhino looks good. It's too likely that Tariq just has to chump block the Hero of Iroas otherwise.
Aqueous Form. That'll trigger Heroic. Prowess 2. Take a look at that top card.
And if Tariq is all out of removal spells, this is bad news.
Red zone we go. Tom keeping the card on top of Battle-Wise Hoplite, so the Scry from Aqueous Form will be unnecessary. Looks like we'll have a double block here. Tariq wants to play it pretty safe. Figure out what card Tom wants to kill.
The biggest risk with this block is if Tom has Defiant Strike, but you've already seen 2 copies cast.
Yep.
And there's a lot of random spells that Tom can have here where if you single block, you lose your blocker and nothing good happens.
There's a replacement Seeker of the Way and just a passing of the turn. Patel down to 4. He'll take a draw. It's a Forest.
Part of Tom's motivation there to offer up the trade with Seeker of the Way is to hedge a little bit against Bile Blight with another Seeker in hand.
Yeah, 3 copies of Bile Blight here in Patel's deck. There's a Forest.
Very impressive display thus far from Tom. Tariq's draw quite good. Been able to cast spells on time. 2 copies of Hero's Downfall, Thoughtseize, and I get the impression that if Tariq does not draw a removal spell next turn or the turn after, the Siege Rhinos can keep him alive, it's still not going to be enough.
The Rhino brings Patel up to 6. Well, there's an Aqueous Form.
Okay, well, that'll do it.
He knew it was there. Kept it on top pretty quick. Little scry action. Leave it on top. Triggered Prowess 2.
So that is Xaxes.
Yes, it is. And that will do just fine. Tom Ross going to win game number 1 here against Tariq Patel. Bant Heroic very quickly up a game over Obzon Aggro. Aqueous Form proven to be pretty powerful, actually.
It was great there. Tom was able to play the game in such a way that Tariq had to use his removal spells, one to draw out of God's Willing and one to draw just to get the largest creatures off the table to set up running Siege Rhinos. And he was out of removal spells, and his only defense at that point was blocking, and Aqueous Form is perfect in that spot.
We'll go to the sideboards. We will start with Patel, where he has 2 copies of Elspeth Sun's Champion, 2 Nissa Worldwaker, an Obzon Charm, 2 Thoughtseize, 3 Drown in Sorrow, 2 Ooh, I haven't seen this one in a while. 2 Archfiend of Depravity for the green-white Devotion matchup. 2 Ultimate Price and a Glare of Heresy.
So the best cards in the matchup here, I believe, are the Glare of Heresy and the 2 copies of Ultimate Price. Just very consistent, cheap removal. Ultimate Price can be played at instant speed, and both Ultimate Price and Glare of Heresy handle large creatures that have gotten out of control. I think the 2 copies of Thoughtseize are good here. I think Drown in Sorrow is okay on the play, though overall I'm not a big fan of it in the matchup. I think Abzan Charm is fine, and the 2 copies of Elspeth are a nice endgame here for Tariq. I think he needs to convert more into a control deck, because damage racing against Tom is something his deck doesn't do very well, particularly given the burdens of his mana base. So I think he's well equipped here to become more of a control deck, play a lot more removal, ignore some of his early game threats, and try to get to late game plays like Elspeth.
What do we see on the other side?
2 copies of Monastery Mentor, Laguna Trailblazer, 2 copies of Encase in Ice, 2 copies of Ordeal of Heliod, the Temple of Enlightenment, 2 Treasure Cruise, 4 Stubborn Denial, 1 copy of Ajani's Presence. I like Ajani's Presence a lot in this matchup. I'm not sure if this is the type of matchup where Stubborn Denial comes in. Tariq's deck does not have a lot of spells, but the spells that he has are very impactful, so that those may or may not come in. I've seen Tom bring in Monastery Mentor basically post-board all day long yesterday. I think the same thing is happening here anytime the matchup slows down a little bit. I think Monastery Mentor comes in.
Well, with season 2 underway, it's not the longest season, but we will take a look at the dates here. We're in Syracuse, obviously, right now. Next weekend, we have off for states, and we'll turn it back on with Providence.
Yeah, Providence, Cleveland, and Portland all standard opens. Now, keep in mind, that was the Seattle date that you're seeing there. It's been moved to Portland May 2nd and 3rd. After that, we head to Dallas for a standard open, Worcester, which will be Legacy, and then the Season 2 Invitational in Columbus, Ohio, tied to the Origins Game Fair. Modern and Standard is the invitational formats with a 2-day, $20,000 Modern Open Series, June 5th through 7th.
A short one, but it's going to be a fun one.
Yes.
I expect that. We'll have a bit of an East Coast slant, make a little trip down to old Dallas, Worcester, and all of a sudden we're in Columbus at Origins yet again for a 4th year in a row.
Dallas will be my first show off this
Congratulations.
year. Thank you.
What are you going to do?
Head up to the Bay Area to celebrate with my girlfriend who is graduating from graduate school.
Wow, very nice. Very nice. Hopefully you can go see a Golden State Warriors playoff game.
Well, that is around the time that they are likely to be playing the Clippers in round 2, so I will definitely be there if that's happening.
I hope that happens. That's when the Warriors will probably be up 3-0 and not trying anymore, I think.
Yeah,
Is that
not trying
probably
anymore.
where we'll be at?
Classic hot take.
Give you a game, make you feel good. I just call it like I see it, man. That's all I do. See, it's win-win for me this year. Either the Warriors or the Cavs are going to win. It's very clear.
You get to call 2 teams we.
You
It's
can
really
have
nice.
you can have the field. One of the good guys going to get the job done. Tom going back to the drawing board here. Maybe he thought of something at the last minute he wants to bring in. Part of the reason these heroic decks exist to beat up on the old green strategies.
It's a little bit different here because part of capitalizing on the green decks is the fact that they don't do things on the first couple turns of the game. Abzan aggro is a little bit different, but they are still susceptible to much of the same stuff. Your God's Willings trade very efficiently. A lot of their removal, because of their mana base or because their removal doesn't always line up the right way against your threats. Sometimes it's a little shaky, a little unreliable. So it's still a solid matchup. The texture of it's a little bit different than you see against the Abzan control decks, but I think this is still a matchup Tom's happy to play.
And the one thing that Abzan aggro does do to itself is deal itself a decent amount of damage.
And because Tariq is playing to the board early and often, it does make Tom's copies of Dromoka's command more powerful in this matchup than they would be against Abzan control. Because Tom is more likely to get in scenarios where Tariq taps out for, let's say, an Anafend zone the 3rd turn of the game, or a Fleecebane Lion early on. Tom can, take care of that instant speed, grow something, then protect it. That sequence is very hard for Abzan aggro to recover from. So Dromoka's command could be a very big player for Tom in this matchup. And the same thing is true on the other side of the table. If Tariq gets out in front of things, Dromoka's command is a very nice way of killing creatures before they get out of control. If timed correctly, can deal with certain things like Ordeal and Aqueous Form. So that's a swing card in this matchup. Both players have it, and the player who's out in front is more likely to be able to leverage it than the person who's behind.
4 copies of Dromoka's Command in Tom's deck, 3 in Tariq's. These might be the 2 best Dromoka's Command decks in the format.
Abzan Aggro was the deck that was pointed at, a pre-existing deck that would obviously play this card.
Yeah.
It's in the market for fighting. Some of these decks had already played Abzan Advantage in the sideboard. It just makes a lot of sense to have it. Ban Heroic, this is a new thing. It slots in very naturally into Heroic Shells for reasons that we've seen on camera several times on Tom's side so far, but not a pre-existing deck, and so it didn't cross people's mind. But that's why he's the boss and we're not.
It's true.
Ahead of his time.
Said he brewed it up on the car ride here. Doing pretty well, 8-2. See how Tom wants to start things. Does have a Temple Enlightenment, also has a Flooded Strand, and has a favorite Hoplite in hand. So see if he wants to take a slower approach. Start with the Temple, then maybe play Seeker of the Way. If he just wants to say, you know what, play this Flooded Strand, crack it, get a Plains, play favorite Hoplite, excuse me. Looks like he's going to go with the latter.
And if he does not have, he does have a God's Willing. Okay, this is interesting. To me, the incentive to curve out is if you don't have God's Willing, just kind of cast your stuff on time and hope to curve out against a deck with some mana stumbles.
There's Case of Coils.
While we're on the topic of mana stumbles, I suppose Tariq is technically not stumbling.
He is not stumbling.
This is just painful. That's all.
Just a touch. Tom with a Windswept Teeth and a Manic Influence in hand. So he'll be a little painful too this game. See which route the boss wants to go. He'll start with Windswept Teeth. He'll get the Forest, the only one in his deck. Now Seeker of the Way. I'm passing the turn back.
I think if Tom's first order of business that turn was attacking, he probably could have squeezed a point of damage through.
Think so?
Risk of Defiant Strike is very high there, and Tom did have God's Willing in his hand. I know that's not how you want to use a God's Willing, but in the event that Tariq blocks, it's not like you just lose your Hoplite for nothing. And I think if you just untap and attack, he's just going to say, I'll take one.
Flooded Strand the draw.
And Tom and I share a passion for free points of damage, so have to bring it up.
Oh, and I don't. I hate trying to sneak 1 or 2 in.
Oh, I know you love it too.
Flooded Strand. Have to imagine an island on the way. There's Ordeal. Now it's time to go beatdowns. Tariq looks like he's going to do some blocking here. Looks like players just making sure their life totals are correct in this instance.
So this feels like a pretty attractive spot for Tariq to block the Seeker of the Way. It looks like Tom may have missed his trigger there.
Yeah.
Because even in a scenario where Tom has Defiant Strike, which is the card you're most worried about, you still can pump yours up to a 4/4, and the Seeker of the Way only gets to 4 toughness.
This is interesting. Death Dealer will go here. Looks like it might just be regeneration.
If he regenerates, Tom can just say, okay, that's fine.
Yeah. So some damage will be coming through here. Tom will gain a little bit of life because of the prowess trigger. And now he's just got God's Willing at the ready.
Interesting to see what Tariq's plan of action here is. That felt like a pretty good spot to cash in the Death Dealer where your risk is low. I'm not sure how much you want to be leaving up mana to regenerate this thing and to pump it when it's dealing so much damage to you. And if Tariq's hand is clogged up with other stuff, then leaving up mana to pump into the Death Dealer is a pretty big cost. So, interested to see what Tariq's plan is with the Death Dealer, because that was a good spot to bail out on it. You could have just blocked, pumped. If it trades with the God's Willing, cool. If Tom has a Fine Strike, fine. And you move on.
It's a painful turn there.
It's painful, yeah. And now, Tom still has 2 creatures in play. One of them's growing. And committing 2 mana to the Death Dealer to regenerate every turn is a fairly large cost, both in terms of mana and life total. And it's not like Tariq's in a position to race back to start attacking. He's on the defense very solidly right now.
Well, we'll see what Tariq wants to put together here on his 4th turn of the game. He'll start with another Pain Land and Land of War Waste. This damage is really starting to add up for him. Looks like he might have to take even a little more to cast a Siege Rhino. Tom going to very quickly untap and take a draw. Windswept Heath to draw. So now Tom's starting to flood out a touch.
Yep, and this is where missing that trigger last turn is so critical. You'd be looking at a Hoplite that could freely attack into the board, where it's very risky for Tariq to muster any sort of block. Instead, now it's risky for Tom to attack, because if he attacks and Tariq blocks with the Siege Rhino, then Tom needs some pretty specific cards to play over it. And when you're flooding out, drawing 2 cards is very nice also.
It would be pleasurable.
Tom needs some things to do.
Temple of Enlightenment leaves the top card on top of the deck. He'll just pass the turn back. Patel looking to stabilize and eventually start getting on the aggressive. A 3rd copy of Land of War Waste. As far as colors are concerned, that's not an issue.
Nope. And Tariq's at 15, so it's not immediately pressing, but those Pain Lands are going to add up.
But he's coming in the red zone now. Enough is enough. Let's get to work. I have to imagine he's got a pretty good follow-up if he's making this attack. Tom going to block the Death Dealer here. Force a little action here from Tariq. It'll be a painful regeneration.
And this is part of, I think, the incentive for Tom to make this play is just forcing Tariq to spend his turn pumping the Death Dealer when it's this painful. It's very good for him.
4 damage will come through.
And I think that the reason that Tom was willing to chump block there is if Tariq's making an attack like that, it implies that he's either confident in his ability to remove the Hoplite or he has some large creature to follow up with. So swallowing up 2 of that mana makes it a lot trickier.
Defiant Strike the draw.
It is not an intuitive play, but I think the block there makes a lot of sense if Tom thinks Tariq probably has another copy of Siege Rhino based on this attack, and getting his whole turn here is very good.
Tom will sacrifice the fetch land, go get Plains. We'll see just how much he can do to catch up here. Missing that trigger has been huge this game, though.
Yes, I mean, the consequences have been compounding.
Defiant Strike will trigger Heroic, draw a card, Ordeal of Thassa is what he's found. We'll see how deep down the rabbit hole Tom wants to go. Potential for a really big turn here.
Well, the issue is he's already made a land drop. If he plays the Ordeal, he probably wants to play a blocker. At that point, the shields are down on the God's Willing unless he picks up another hoplite.
He's coming in. Trigger 1, peel 2. Trigger again, peel 2 more. So they're going to attack for 7 here. 5 counters, 1 base power off of the hoplite, and then 1 from the Defiant Strike. Let's see if Patel wants to do any chump blocking here, perhaps.
And if Tariq says no blocks, then I think Tom is forced to tap out for another creature. Because last turn to me felt like he was playing a bit around Siege Rhino. And if he still respects the possibility of Siege Rhino, Tariq's board is lethal. If he chump blocks, which it appears that Tariq is doing, Tom may say, okay, that's fine, I'll keep up God's Willing.
A lot of cards in his hand, 2 God's Willings over there.
Because if he's not at risk of dying this turn, the next turn he gets to go creature, still keep plugging at you with my 6/7. He can gum up the ground, chump block at his leisure, and not worry about dying. If Tariq had left the Fleecebane Lion in play, Tom might have had to pursue a riskier line, or accept that he was dying to Siege Rhino.
This is a real painful thought seize. Tom more than happy to show off his hand with a lot of God's Willings. There might be a Center Soul hanging out there too. We'll see as Tariq lays it out. Yep, there's 2 God's Willings, 1 Center Soul, 2 Battle-Wise Hoplites, Seeker of the Way, and a land.
This hand is really bad news for Tariq because it means that 6/7's not going anywhere unless Tariq can get to his 1 Elspeth. And Tom is capable of producing a lot of chump blockers over the next 2 turns, while the 6/7 is very hard to answer.
It's basically an impossible hand to Thoughtseize too. I mean, what do you take out of this hand with Thoughtseize? You want to take away those protection effects, but you can't take them all.
I feel like the card he's got to take here is Center Soul, because Center Soul allows Tom to set it to black or green or whatever and attack uncontested over 2 turns. Tariq's game plan at this point has to involve blocking and chump blocking, and Center Soul is so good against that game plan that feels like the card he's got to take.
He's going to go with God's Willing.
Because the problem is Tom is not in any way forced to do anything right now. He can just attack. Tariq cannot cobble together a block that works. And Tariq has to spend quite a few life points here just to regenerate the Death Dealer. So Tom can just attack, allow Tariq to block, play some chump blockers, rinse and repeat.
Sandsep Citadel passing of the turn, it seems, and it is. Tom will untap. It's 8-9 in favor of Tariq right now. But Tom has always been pretty good on sensing a little weakness from his opponent. Don't know if Tom's able to go for it and get the job done this turn.
I think the reason not to push too hard, unless Tom feels he's got the kill rolled up, he could beat a removal spell, there's really no incentive to go for it, because the way things stand right now are very favorable for Tom. He's got a lot of insurance against removal spells. He's still going to be able to deal a couple points of damage here and there, just because of the regeneration issue.
There's an Encase in Ice.
This is also excellent.
Yep.
That makes things much simpler.
Coming on in. I believe that may be the debut for Encase in Ice.
I think Shaheen Sarani might have played it on camera during the Invitational.
Sure.
Not positive, but I think that may have happened.
It's a very Shaheen card. There is a Seeker of the Way.
The man loves efficient sideboard cards against beatdown decks.
He does.
Because that's where he gets almost all of his losses. So.
And he'll never play that style of deck.
So this is, what you see right now is sort of the incentive from Tariq's side for taking the God's Willing the previous turn. If he takes Center Soul or something else, Tom gets to hold up 2 protection effects. If he wants to make another play, it means he's only playing through 1. But now with the Encase and Ice having been cast, Tom is not forced to proactively use
those protection spells.
Yeah, he can just keep attacking here and put all the pressure on Tariq to answer what's going on.
And with Tariq at 3 life right now, too, and with how his mana base is set up, he might have to deal himself another point of damage or 2, and then life is really tough.
And Tom does not have to play around another Siege Rhino here because he's at 8, so he can take this hit uncontested and still survive a Siege Rhino trigger.
And go down to 4, Siege Rhino bring him down to 1, he's still perfectly fine.
Exactly. And with 2 protection effects, he doesn't even have to worry about something like a weird 1-mana removal spell tripping him up.
And Tariq is going to actually just pass the turn back, so he's not making an attack. That almost feels like a win for Tom at this point.
Well, Tom's got, because he's got some spells in his hand, he's got 2 lethal attackers here, so he can attack and see what happens.
Tom will start with a Temple. Top card will go to the bottom from the Scry.
Even if Tariq's hand is something like 2 copies of Hero's Downfall, it's hard for him to just literally cast 2 copies of Hero's Downfall and not die, given the constraints of his mana.
Yep. Even a card like Obzon Charm, a touch painful.
Exactly. Obzon Charm's a little bit, I guess he gets to use the planes.
He would have to take 1.
It's still tough.
Here's a proactive copy of God's Willing. Elevator goes up. Gonna come in with that. And that's gonna make it pretty easy. Tom Ross gonna win this match here over Tariq Patel, 2-0. Bant Heroic will take care of Obzon aggro. The boss, with what he brewed up in the backseat of Todd Anderson's car, 9-2.